basketball. But at the same time, I was working for a company, and that company was a finance company. So I was lucky enough to be playing a sport I love playing, but I was being paid to work and to play. But essentially, when I was there, I started understanding what I wanted to do was start a business and do something different. And I didn't want to work for somebody else. And I'm not saying that's right for everybody. I know for a fact it's not right for everybody, because some people do need a boss and they need to work for someone. Others can come up with a product or franchise a business and do it themselves. So when I first left Japan, after I was there for 4 years, I started my first business, and that business was I tried to bring athletes from America back to Tokyo and to do personal events, which would be through companies or through big event centers. Well, I needed to work with different companies, and I was young at the time. I was older than you guys, but the point is, in the Japanese society, they looked at me as very young. I hadn't done it before, so they looked at me like, oh, this guy's too young, he can't do it. I wasn't Japanese, so they looked at me like I couldn't do it. And to be honest with you, I worked on it about a year and a half, and it just became very difficult. So I knew it was time to try something else. And then in the meantime, I started a couple other businesses. And since we are kind of pressed for time, I won't go into all of them, but many of them were based upon things that I was close to or things that I was doing. And I know later we can get into kind of how to find what's good for you. But for me, when I was in Tokyo or in college, I was a bad free throw shooter, and I invented a device that helps you shoot free throws. It keeps your arm straight, et cetera, et cetera. You basketball players out there might understand, but a lot of people don't want to practice free throws. But the idea is, as a basketball player, I come up with a basketball idea. I wasn't going to come up with a golf idea if I'm not a golfer. So I think business ideas a lot of times are hatched from within. I was always taking photos, and um, obviously now I have a photography business, and in between the photography business or Japan and actually starting the business, I was taking photos. It was a passion, it wasn't a business. I was firming up my photography skills. At the same time, I was trying to figure out, is there a way I can start this business and for it to make money? And that's kind of the key to all businesses. Obviously, we all want to be involved in a business that's fun, but how is it going to translate from a passion to something that can actually make money? So that kind of leads into identifying a problem. So we all have our own, everybody that just introduced themselves, I don't know any of you personally, but you all have your own stories. Some of you are very good friends, some of you are acquaintances, but you all have families, you all have neighborhoods, you all have your own groups of people, or maybe an uncle that has a business that, I don't know, maybe it doesn't really matter. But when you're close to something and you start brainstorming on the idea, you see a problem that may exist, or you see businesses that address it one way. You may address it a different way. And it may be on price, or it may be on what the product is made of, or maybe how you sell it. Obviously, a lot of people are selling online now, but maybe you go backwards in time a little bit and you sell direct or door to door. I'm not saying that's always the best way to do it, because online you're reaching a lot of people. But once you find this problem, you have to find the solution. And how does your solution differ from the others out there? Because I can tell you one thing, yours isn't the only business out there like you have started. Whatever it is that you are starting, or whatever problem you found, somebody else has found that before, and they have gone at it different ways than you probably will. But a successful business finds a good solution, finds a way to create that product and make a margin. And I don't know how far you guys are into discussing the actual structure of a business or margins, but a margin is simply the difference between how much it costs you to make something and how much you sell it for. So if you look at a normal product, let's say in a simple example, like a dollar store, they buy things anywhere from 25 cents to 75 cents. Some items they only make 25 cents on. Other items, their margin is much higher and they make 75 cents on. But they have what's called a blended margin, which is about 50 cents, which is about doubling what they pay for the item. So if you're not making your item, you're buying something, you've got to at least double your money. Doubling your money is absolutely key. I don't care what business you're in, you have to double, but you'd like to triple or quadruple. Somebody said, I forgot who it was, they're into art. Now, art, which I'm into, there's a lot of margin in the art world. So in the art world, you can essentially mark things up, have a higher margin than you would at that dollar store that I just mentioned. The dollar store, they're tight. They know they can only sell things for $1. In my world, I could create something today and put $1,000 price tag on it. Does that mean I'm going to sell it? No. I've never gone at it that way. I've always made things very affordable. And that brings up what we're going through right now, COVID. COVID has affected businesses and people have had to what's called pivot within their business. Now, I think pivoting, some of the basketball players out there know what pivoting means. Pivoting means you have one foot on the ground and you're pivoting the other foot around it. The point is you're kind of going in a circle there. In a business pivot, I think there's two types of pivoting. Pivoting within your industry, like I did during COVID, or pivoting out of what you're doing. So some restaurants currently are unable to make their restaurant work during COVID because COVID has made it difficult for people to go out and eat. Therefore, the restaurants haven't made it. People aren't making enough money. They pivot out. What I did is pivoted within. So I pivoted within my own business. And if you look behind me, there's a wall back there, and you can probably see 40 pictures from either side of my shoulders. And then to my right, there's some. To my left, there's some. So I have about 70 actual photos on the wall now. And I don't know if you can read it, but it says $10. Those I used to sell for $40. And I would sell some, but that's kind of a high price. But then there was framing and et cetera, et cetera. But now I'm just selling them as is. As you see them, I have which you can't see, it's off camera, stacks of inventory. So if you walk in my store right now, you'll come in, you can look at these. Now there's other things at different prices, but at the $10 price point, which I never had before COVID, I made sales, but I didn't make as many sales. I'm making sales here. My margin, which I talked about earlier, like the dollar store, my margin is lower, but I'm making a lot of sales. So with that, it opens up more customers. It allows me to make a sale almost to everybody who walks in. If your pricing is higher, then that margin is going to be more, but you're not going to make as many sales. So when you guys are considering businesses or considering prices, or I should say your final price to the consumer, the idea is, do I want to make a lot of money on each item, or do I want to make less money and make more sales? And I think I've always gone at it where I want to make more than make one sale in a day. And that's just my strategy. That doesn't mean it's going to be yours. It's not going to be everybody in that room or wherever anybody is right now. Everybody's thinking differently. And I hope everybody's excited about business because it could be your future. You could be working for yourself. Like me, I work for myself. I don't have a boss. This is my store. I come here every day. Now I work a lot of hours. I probably work 80 hours a week. If you don't want to work 60 hours a week, don't even think of starting a business. If I can teach you one thing about business, forget it. Go work for the Postal Service, go work for Mariano's, go do whatever you want. But if you become a doctor, you're kind of working for yourself. Your hours are going to exceed 50 hours a week for sure. So anything you're working for yourself, you have to be ready to take on that hourly workload and essentially be a go-getter. And as you sit there now, everyone, you know, is probably still trying to figure it out. And it's going to be fun for me to kind of follow you. I hope I can either follow it online or in person at some point to see what everyone's deciding to do and moving forward. And again, I don't know if, you know, you guys can have my email if you want to shoot me questions in the process. I don't know how that works with other people you've come in contact with through the program, but my email's open. Heck, my phone, you can have that and call me if I can be of any assistance with some of those things that I was mentioning. I've probably had 4 businesses, and I've gone through the different process of pricing. Who are my partners going to be? Where is it going to be? So on and so forth. So I don't know how we're doing on time, Bart. Are we okay? Is there time for questions, or should I keep kind of going?
No, we've got about 20 minutes that I'd set aside for time. So if you've got, you know, another, we're good. If you want to go for another 10, or we could, you know, kind of dive into a conversation.
Uh, at this point, maybe if somebody wants to shoot something at me, you know, on something I've already said, I could probably get into that a little deeper if there's something out there that that somebody is thinking.
Here in the classroom, I know we've got a couple. So just
Oh, how long did it take you?
I have a little trouble hearing in the classroom. It's a little bit distant. So if I could hear that question again.
so the question is kind of around a J curve, right? A startup cost of a business, and then how long did it actually take you for it to kind of be going at a place where you're like, okay, you know, I could see this, you know, being the long term.
The current business, the photography.
Yeah.
Yeah. So my photography business, as I mentioned, it started as a passion. Then I got a little bit more serious about it. For me, when I was making my decision to change from my last business to this business, it was all about a retail partner. I reached out to Costco and I tried to see if they'd be interested in allowing me to sell my photos in Costco. But I didn't want them on the store shelf. What I wanted to do was called a roadshow. A roadshow in Costco simply means they give you a piece of concrete, you come in, you build a display. It would be similar to like a flea market or an art show or something like that. That's what I was pitching to Costco. It took me 3 years to get in Costco from the time I called to the time they finally said yes. So it took 3 years. So this is a real life example dealing with a huge company. Once they said yes, I said, okay, I've got something here. I didn't have a store when I first started. I just had Costco. Then I expanded the business into selling to companies and hotels. So I had Costco. Then I started selling to hotels and I cold called. I knocked on doors. I said, hey, I'm a local photographer. I'd like to sell you some photos for your wall. The good part about that business, I didn't make them in advance. I mean, that part to the hotels. Costco, I had to make stuff and bring it in. That was all on me. The hotel business and the corporate side of my business, I went and found that business. So I have done business with the Ritz-Carlton, which is a 5-star hotel, and I've done business with 1-star hotels. It all depends on how much they have to spend, and then I structure the product differently. I make it out of different material. I make the frames different. It might be plastic instead of glass. It may be a plastic frame instead of a wood frame. All of those things affect the final cost. But I've done all sorts of corporate business. And then from doing Costco plus corporate, I went to my third part of my business, which is my store. I had one store up the block, which was about 300 square feet. This place is about 1,600 square feet. So I quadrupled the size of my physical store. And then I started one more part of the business, which is installations. So I go in with my team. If we sell a bunch, like a hotel, they might buy 200-300 pictures. They don't buy 10, they buy 100. We go in and install them. When we install them, basically we're hanging photos that they don't want to do. Well, we charge them for that. So there's really 4 parts of my business. And that's how it's grown over time. It's not one day you have all four parts. It's I get in Costco, I do corporate, I get my store, then I see another need, another problem. It wasn't really a problem per se, but it was. Those people on the corporate side in a law firm or an accounting firm, they don't want to hang pictures. They're going to have to go hire somebody anyway. If I just sold them 10, 20, 30 pictures, I say, hey, I can help you with that. It's going to cost you this. So it's a residual income on top of selling the pictures, then you get some more business. I hope that answered your question.
Perseverance it took for 3 years knocking on the door at Costco to really get that first partnership. And I imagine there must have been times during that process where you're like, I'm not sure if this is going to work. You had to think of different angles, right, to approach them. Just keep
Yeah.
kind of moving away.
Yeah, I can dig into that a little more. And that I'm a pretty persistent person in general, but that 3 years was testing me because in that 3 years, I'll bet you they said no 50 times. And when they say no, basically you knock on the door and it's very hard to get them to open the door. You can't just walk over to Mariano's or to Target or to any store that you can think of and say, hey, I want to sell my product in your store. There's usually a buyer. That buyer is usually located in another state. The buyer's job is to buy new products for Target, Costco, any store you think of. You have to convince them your product is better than what they already have. This is very difficult because they already have something similar to your product. If you're selling candles to Target, Target has candles. Why is your candle better? Well, I go through the process with mine. They said, why are people going to buy photos in Costco? Well, for me, it was fairly easy. I said, there's two people that buy from me. Businesses, could be a doctor's office, could be a law firm, like I mentioned, or it's an individual that has a home. Those two people walk through the aisles of Costco all the time. They're going to be walking through. I'm going to be there. People are going to see me, and then they're going to buy my stuff. And I knew once I got in, they would buy from me. But how do you get in? How do you cross over? Then they said, you're too small. They didn't like my pricing at first. They thought it was too high. I had to bring my pricing down and down and down. I don't think there's one behind me, but one product that I sell in Costco, which is about 3 feet by 2 feet, I sell in my store for $195. In Costco, it sells for $120. So they basically say, okay, we know what you sell it for, but if you want to come into Costco, you're going to sell it for this. So they're telling you what you're going to sell for. You don't tell them, they tell you. And then it comes down to me during that 3-year period. Am I going to be able to make my product, get it over to Costco, pay people to help me unload the truck, build my display, sell it, and still make money? And I'm able to do that after this time period. I don't sell as many here. I sell more at Costco than I do at my store. Therefore, I can withstand that. But what it does do is it turns into more business for me. Sometimes people walk through the aisle, they see me at Costco, they'll come up to me and say, hey, I own a business. Here's my card. Call me. Well, I just got business because I was at Costco. They didn't buy them from me at Costco. I go to their place of business, the hotel or whatever it may be, and then we do business outside of Costco. So it's basically an opportunity for me to meet more people.
Great. That's great. I know let's go one more question in the classroom and one on Zoom. Keller, just tell me and we'll relay it to Mr. Galley.
So we were talking about the strategy that they right there, his mindset and my sales and my plan. And I have to ask, like, when I grow new reputational sales and restaurants and the plan.
You mean like in terms of one product that's more expensive than, or the question was, you'd rather make more sales and less money, right, than more money and fewer sales? And why'd you choose that?
I think it's more of a moral thing with me. And morals a lot of times don't get into business, but I consider myself a morally sound person. Quite frankly, I don't understand artists that put, because now I'm in the art business, that put a price on things that is so high, and they consider themselves a collectible artist. So in the art world, there's some people, Picasso and these, they call them masters. Well, those people demand a high number. I don't think I'm that great. So I don't think I should put a price on something that people can't afford. I want to be able to sell my product to everybody. Therefore, I keep my pricing down and I can share my art with a lot more people. It's not untouchable. It's not, oh, only certain people can afford it because it's $5,000, $10,000, $100,000. I sell my stuff. The example behind me, I have some stuff downstairs that's $5. Now, in most art places, you can't buy things at those type of prices. But for me, on the business side, it lets me make sales. On, I guess, the moral side, it lets me share with a lot of other people. And I can feel good about myself. I wouldn't feel good about myself if I was charging too much.
That's good. Thank you. So we've covered a lot of ground. We've covered margins. We covered markup, which is the value up and above what it costs to make and produce. Let's go to Zoom. Do you guys have one question you want to ask Bob?
So the question I'm asking is like, do you ever get tired of Chicago? Because sometimes it gets like, it kind of gets repetitive because I've been Chicago for so long since I grew up here.
As far as being a photographer or as far as living?
I guess as far as being a photographer, yeah.
Yeah, no, I think that's an excellent question, just because as a photographer or in any business, I don't think it has to be limited to photography. Any business needs to keep testing you, and it needs for you to keep attacking it. Just like, heck, anything else in life, a relationship or work or whatever. But in your business, if you're building this business, you want it to keep testing you, and you want to keep raising the bar and doing more. Chicago is always around me, and I'm a Chicago guy. I went to school in Arizona, and then I went to Tokyo. But on the front side, I grew up in Chicago, and now I've been in Chicago ever since. So I do miss being out and about in other cities. I do love Chicago. I know some stuff's going on right now. We'll all get through it. But the point is, Chicago has architecture. I like alleys. I don't know if you guys have gone to my website or not, but I have a whole collection of fire escapes, graffiti. I like the urban nature of Chicago. I do like the skyline, and I do like what we see like from afar, but I like getting up close. I like textures. Chicago offers a lot of that, and you can always go find more if you go off the beaten path. So I think Chicago, being as big as it is, and it has a lot of neighborhoods, it's good to get out of your neighborhood. It's good to go explore. It's good to see different things. So I love that about Chicago.
That's great. Thank you. I think we do have time for one more question. So let's go. Yeah, Yadi, go ahead. This is Yadira. Yeah, so among the projects that you've gotten to work on or your work, what's your favorite and why? And it might be tough, but
As far as business projects?
well, let's go among the taken. Is there
guess
one that stands out? Like, that's my favorite photo.
Yeah, no, I think there is one. So I don't know how old you guys are, but when the Chicago Bulls were on their run with Michael Jordan, what I was doing was opening stores after they won the championships all over the city. So they weren't a store like you see my store here, which is physically open all the time. What I would do is go to different areas of the city, and I would open up little stores, usually about 1,000 square feet. But most of the time they were downtown, and it would have been a store that wasn't rented, and I would fill it up with Bulls merchandise the day after they won. So if they won on Sunday night at 9 p.m., all night we would build these stores. I had a whole crew, and we would have merchandise. We'd have shirts, and we'd have hats, and we'd have banners. But the last year, which was 1998, Jordan's last year, the sixth championship, I had 7 stores that I opened. I started with one store, and I wasn't sure it was going to work, but it was in the train station. It was in Union Station downtown. And that wasn't in a store. That was just a piece of concrete that they gave me. So every day we had to build it. So we'd get there at 5 in the morning. We'd actually physically build the fencing and the walls, and then we'd put up all the gear. And everybody would be coming in from the trains. And everyone was all excited. It was the first championship, and they were buying stuff, and it was great. I loved that business because I was paying a lot of money to be. I'll tell you what I was paying. It doesn't really matter. I was paying $5,000 a week to be in that train station. So when I told my friends and family I was going to pay $5,000 for 1 week to be in the train station, everyone said I was crazy. Trust me, I made $5,000 very quickly with that business idea. And then everyone said, oh my gosh, Bob, you're really smart. But no one believed it before because it was such a high number. And not only did I stay there a week, I stayed there 5 weeks. Because what happens in that whole world is after a team wins a championship, they bring out more stuff. The hats and shirts come out first. They come out the first day. But then photos come out, and banners and garbage cans and gold coins. So as the different merch came out, I was buying anything I could get my hands on. Little Beanie Babies and stuffed animals. But they were all based on that championship. As a sports person and a business person, it combined 2 things I knew. So going back to solving a problem, this was perfect for me. The problem was people didn't want to go to a store and buy it if they were getting off a train. Why didn't I present the product right in front of these people getting off the train or going to the train at night and telling these people every day I'm going to have new merchandise. Come back and see me. And they bought. So I almost forgot about that whole business, and I did that for 6 years. But the point is, that helped me in my businesses today. I'm actually looking at doing it right now. I'm looking at doing a store and water tower down on Michigan Avenue for the holiday season, because it'll expose me to more people, not just me in my neighborhood here. And I'll bring this product and some other products that people can just grab and go. And I've already done that. So it's not hard for me to mimic what I've already done. Just negotiate a deal with Water Tower, a short-term lease. I don't know how much time we have, but a short-term lease, when I'm saying $5,000 for 1 week, that's a short-term lease, but you have to pay top dollar because you're in a fantastic spot. When you sign a normal lease, normally it's 3 to 5 years. It's not as much per month, but it's a longer term lease. So then you're in your one spot. My spot here is a 5-year lease. So that's a whole different part of the business, but it's something to be considered, because when you're pricing your product, your lease, you have to pay that lease. You have to pay a certain amount of money to be in this spot. Then you have to pay money to build the product. Then you have to pay taxes, which I just did the other day. Then you have other expenses. Those expenses need to be built into the price of the item. So yeah, that's that. Good question there. I forgot about that business.
Can you just tell us what would you make in a week? So if you paid $5K, what
What would I make? Sales?
Yeah.
Sales in a week were over 20 grand
So you
per
would
week.
Yeah, that's awesome. So I'm just
Yeah.
going to ask one more question. So most of the students here are juniors in high school, and we're working on 2 things really, kind of refining a skill set to be ready for the professional world and for college. And then obviously we're going to be beginning to engage in business building October and November of this year. So I don't know, just a couple things you would leave for, 17-year-old Bob, anything that you would tell yourself at that point that you kind of leave us with.
Yeah, I as even, and again, I thank you guys for being an audience from the beginning, but it's helpful for anyone of any age to look back at what they've done. And I'm not going to write a book, but even talking about that business started me thinking about my current potential over at Water Tower. I remember a couple things I forgot, or the electric didn't work, or certain things. Everything we do leads to things we're going to do in our future. I don't just, I know that's what we're talking about here is business, have family, and we have disagreements. Things don't always go great in a family, or they don't always go great in a business. It's how you get to the other side. You know, how do you get over that problem, learn from it, and when it happens again, you're like, that's easy. I did it before. I know how to get through this problem. So I think my persistence, for example, in the Costco story, I mean, do not take no for an answer. And if you don't have a way to restructure something, if you're trying to sell that candle into Target and they say it's too expensive, figure out a different way to make it. And then go back to them and say, okay, now your price is different. Your price is this. It used to be this. It was $4 before, and now it's $3.65. And it might not sound like much, but you've listened to them and you've changed your product based on the feedback they give you. So taking feedback from somebody who says no is super, super important. People will say no to you. Your ideas are bad. Your family, like mine with the Bulls idea, nobody thought it was a good idea. Nobody. 0 people except me. And I have some great people around me, but no one thought it was great. I did. And it worked. And I'm not saying, nah, I was right, you guys are wrong. But sometimes those people around you might not have the background in what they're giving you advice for. On the other hand, you can't go cowboy crazy and do stuff that's off the ranch and you don't know what you're doing. It's good to get advice from people who have been to where you want to go.